what I find interesting about the industry that you're in, the managed print industry, because you're right, it's contractual, and everyone now is trying to move into consumption-based models, etc. In some ways, the print resellers have had the best advantage to be able to sell multiple lines of product, because I'm now seeing I shouldn't call them print resellers, document management resellers, whatever you want to call it, that are going now and trying to sell other lines of products. They're trying to sell desktop as a service, they're trying to sell security, etc. But they haven't really got the track record to do it. Why are so many now trying to sort of, I'm not saying move away, but they're trying to make the transition to become more of a broader reseller than just sort of like MPS?
Pre-COVID, I'd say the majority of them didn't move.
Yeah.
What their exit was they'd sell the company to one of the big document providers that you're talking about, who became aggregators of small businesses. My previous employer had 33, 34 acquisitions before they were acquired by a manufacturer. So for many of them, they actually didn't do that. They continued to do what they were doing, knowing that they'd be acquired, that'd be their exit plan, and they'd retire. Thank you very much. The smarter, bigger guys realised this is quite simple. You build once, use many. So you've built a relationship with that customer. How do you use it many times? And then when you see manufacturers like Konica Minolta and like HP and to some extent Xerox, they can sell IT services to their existing customer base. So you don't have to spend the money acquiring new customers. You can sell your existing ones. So it doesn't matter if you are a manufacturer acquired print reseller, or if you're a print reseller that's acquiring others, you can sell more things to the customer, which increases your market value and your value to the customer. And actually, if you sell more things, you become harder to displace.
Yeah. And lots of print resellers are doing that now. So do you think it's accelerated during COVID? They've actually seen an opportunity to think, actually, I'll go and sell more things to existing customers?
I think yes, the brighter ones have spotted the opportunity in the market, but the other ones, depending on their mix of customers, have been forced to do it. Because we've been talking about how I walk into your office and there is a huge amount of people, but there's many offices I walk into where there are no people. So if your business is predicated on putting marks on paper, you're kind of out of luck if there's no one in the office to put marks on paper. Yeah. So actually the smart ones have already made the transition to sell multiple services. But Steve Francis used to be CEO of Danwood, the largest document provider in the industry before Apogee acquired it. And Steve, who's now CEO of SIG PLC, Steve said, print is like running water. People only notice when the tap is turned off. That's the same as IT.
Yeah.
Your laptop, your Note PC you use every day, you take it for granted up until the moment it doesn't work.
Yeah.
The difference is someone will remotely dial in and fix that for you, usually minutes or hours. And that's where the print industry has been playing catch up, and where we've taken a lead with the IT services side to say, well, actually, we can be that single point of contact or one-stop shop for all the things that you have, because we take the IT service methodology, add it to the trust and the contractual relationships we've got. And if you take services we know, we've got 200 service technicians. But if you then plug in a remote by default strategy, well, I can fix everything you've got remotely, because it doesn't matter if it needs a human being to come to you, or if you need remote diagnostics, or if you need remote visualization techniques, we offer that as well. So that's where I think the smarter resellers have grown and understood that the value can be multiplied 10 times by selling multiple things to the same customer.
Yeah. Now, we first spoke, Mark, during the pandemic. And I think you were right. I think I'm right in saying that you were in between jobs. You were looking for a job, but then you had this. Well, I was going to say accident, but almost like life-changing moment. So tell the listeners what happened.
I remember it really clearly. I remember speaking to you on a very nice, hot, sunny day, getting up the next morning, going for a bike ride before I started some landscaping work in the garden, and beautiful sunny day. The bike had just been refreshed, all new pieces on it. I'm going down a gentle hill in the bright sunshine, and the next thing I found myself floating up in the air, and it was like something out of E.T. when the bike takes off, if you can remember that. And then I saw my bike computer floating in front of me, and I thought, this is really strange. And then I realised that I was actually going up and backwards. And then the next thing, I remember pain unlike any pain I've ever felt in my life. And people always say to you, Mark, on a scale of 1 to 10, what does that pain feel like? And you always, it's a 7 or it's an 8. This was a 10. And it turns out that I got hit motorway speeds by a 4x4 from behind on the bike. Why the guy hit me, we don't know. But effectively, he ate the rear wheel. I hit the bonnet, broke the base of my spine where it meets your bum, threw me 70 foot up in the air, landed on my head on the back, and I broke my neck in about 5 places where it meets my spine. So, yeah, I was in a lot of pain. Fortunately, I'd invested in a very good bike helmet. I'll be dead otherwise. And then the second thing that stopped me being paralysed, I believe, is the guy was a doctor who hit me, and he said, leave him on the carriageway, don't move him. And they strapped me to a spinal board, and then it was kind of touch and go whether or not I'll be paralysed. So you're absolutely right. It does put things into context, because it sounds strange, but despite the worst pain I've ever known, and it literally putting your life on pause, the minute you find that you're not dead and you're not paralysed, you're happy. So you take the positive from that situation.
I don't know if I could say the positive. That's a difficult thing to get over. Because were you working at the moment? Were you looking for a job at the
time? I was working for myself, consulting, and I was helping out a few mutual friends. Some of them have been on the podcast with you recently. You know, some of the people in the industry, some of the resellers, working with them, helping them during COVID with remote technology and remote services in their business. So I wasn't formally contracted to anyone, and indeed that was the first thing. I remember doing a post the next morning in bed in traction on a spinal board, and I did a post on LinkedIn at 5:43 in the morning, and I did it for the very simple fact is I thought, shit, I don't know how long I'm going to be here and how long I'm going to be out of action, and people are going to wonder why. And I couldn't even basics. My phone was in my back pocket, and it was just utterly obliterated. So it was just, I grabbed a phone and did a post just to say, I'm still here. You might hear some things, because it was publicised on the news at the time that I've been dead and in a motorbike accident and all kinds of fake news, as Trump would call it. So it was really important to me to get the message out there that, no, I've had an accident, I'm still here though, and I'm still smiling.
So at that time then, there must have been reflection, because you weren't contractually employed.
Yeah.
You're obviously lying in your bed.
Yeah.
Did they give you any sort of time estimations of how long you'd be out, or what? Because at that point, you near-death experience, you've got a broken back, you've got broken bones.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
What was I thinking? Firstly, I was thinking the food is absolutely not the same size portion that my wife makes. Secondly, I'm killed for a flat white, which I exist on, and there wasn't one available. And third was, it was all about recalibrating. So I'm very driven and do a lot of exercise. And for me, I was training for an Ironman on the day that the accident happened. So you're training 15, 17 hours a week. You don't just stop. But it was about recalibrating. So for me, it was, okay, the first thing I need to do is walk. And in fact, it wasn't walking. I didn't realise I couldn't stand. So the first time I stood, the pain was so absolute that I passed out. The second time, I screamed. And then eventually it was like, okay, I can now stand, and I've got a sports watch. So it was a case of then setting myself a target where I need to do 10 steps. And then 10 steps became 1,000 steps. So the nurses had great sport. Most of the people on the ward were very elderly, and I was up at 2, 3 in the morning, and while they were awake, I was doing laps of the ward.
Stop it.
Seeing how many, seeing about a step count. And then when I came out of hospital, and again, I couldn't bathe myself, I couldn't wash myself, I couldn't dress myself. There's lots of things you can't do. So I focused on, what is it can I do? The doctor said walk, because it takes blood flow to the site of the injury. You'll get better. And of course, the conventional wisdom, everybody wants to put you in cotton wool. Everyone says, get on the sofa.
Yeah.
Worst thing you can do. Worst thing. And I couldn't sit on the sofa for 6 months. So for me, it was a case of going, right, painkillers, walk, trying to sleep in a full body brace. Interesting. Not something I'd recommend. So that was the tough part, but you have to focus on what can you do to progress, because everything else is outside of your control.
Do you think having the mindset you had, and obviously, you know, my brother does Ironman. I've done a few marathons. I'm certainly not as fit as you, but do you think being that competitive and bit of a fitness freak from before helped you sort of thing? Because I'm not being funny. Most people would think, oh, they'd take the piss out of me. Walking 10 steps, it's like, just get on with it, Mark. You know what? But from going from Ironman to not being able to walk and trying to do 10 steps, there must be a mindset to think, do you know what? I'm determined to get back to some sort of normality. Because at that point, I'm not being funny. If you said to me, if you were looking back then and said, oh yeah, don't worry, Mark, in 2 years' time you were doing Ironman, would you have believed that? You can't be thinking that at that time, can you?
No, the fitness itself helped with the recovery. They said if I wasn't as fit as I was, I wouldn't have recovered anywhere near as quickly. The frustrating bit came later. And that was when you realise that you may never get to where you were. And then when you're competitive, that's a problem. And then when you're in pain every single day of your life, and you realise that taking painkillers and opioids every day is not a nice situation to be in. So it's a case of saying, okay, how do I get back to where I was? And a psychologist or psychiatrist, always get the two confused, said to me, you need to basically change your goals. You need to set yourself lower targets. And that really pissed me off, because that for me is the opposite to who I am. It doesn't matter what I do or what I buy in life. As Oscar Wilde says, I have the simplest taste in life. I'm always satisfied with the best. So you always want to do the best that you can. The problem is you don't know now where the bar is.
Yeah.
I remember one weekend I had cycled 114 miles on the Saturday, and I tried to do a marathon on the Sunday, and I got home and I had to crawl. I'd done 18 miles and my body just said no more, and I physically had to crawl through the front door. My wife was incandescent with rage. And I spent the weekend.
What are you doing, Mark? Why are you doing this to yourself?
Spent the weekend drinking and taking pills. But then I realised I can't do this, and I had to have 3 months off. So I think for me, the hard part is you can be driven, and that can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if you're not driven, that can be equally as destructive. So where are your levels? And that's the bit.
Because it's we spoke over lunch, and it's interesting you said about being competitive, because you mentioned about maybe not being able to reach the dizzy heights of what you did before. And if you're going on a bike ride and you're thinking, oh, my back's hurt, etc. Some of your friends might be just thinking, oh, Mark, you're just using this as an excuse when you can't use the peak performance of what you did before. Is that frustrating? Do you think actually, a year ago or 2 years ago, I'd have beaten this, or do you actually now accept it, thinking, do you know what? This is the new norm now. That, in fact, the performance I did was probably the best I could have done.
It is frustrating, and I know there'll be a few people listening to this, and they're going to absolutely rinse me for it. But I think the difference is it's not binary. So there'll be some days when you're doing something that's not very intense, but it will hurt, just because you could be in the saddle for a long time. Conversely, you can be riding up a mountain where you've got no pressure on your back and it doesn't hurt as much. Or you could be doing a time trial, which hurts every part of your body, but it only hurts for 10 miles. And then they'll see you performing well. So I think for them, because it's not constant, they do think that part of it is an excuse. But the reality is, again, that just teaches you to be more resilient. And back to what we said about telesales, you learn that there. You learn not to worry about the rejection or what other people think. So every single thing that happens to you in life is formative, providing you listen to what it's telling you.